And you thought, this is going to happen to me almost every single day. It's just, and it stays there. Like, and I told them in the classroom, I says, even if you survive the year, whatever it is, when you get on the airplane, that doesn't stay there. That baggage goes with you. You know, everybody deals with it differently, and everybody handles it, you know, in a different way in a different situation. But and some people can't handle it. But whatever you went through, whether it was good, bad, or how bad it was, or maybe you had less action than somebody else did, but when you get on that airplane, it goes with you.
Yeah, they say that even people who, and I think we discussed this as well, even soldiers who don't see action, when they hear the stories of their fellow soldiers who did, there's another mixed thing that gets added onto it too,
Yeah.
which is I didn't help you guys, and I have a weight with that.
Yeah. In fact, there's one of the other speakers that does a lot of the schools. His name is Bud, and he's been doing it. He was doing it longer than I have. He was Air Force, and we've talked. We've met a lot of times at Bloomingdale High School, and they do the Veterans Day programs or Memorial Day programs and stuff, and we go and we talk. And he says, you know, he says, I have a different view and an attitude and appreciation for some of you guys, and I was there for a year also. He was back in the base camp in a big area, and nobody was really shooting at him every day and stuff. He says, and because I say, you know, whatever you did, that job was just as important as whatever job anybody else was doing. But he says, once you know what went on, or once you listen to somebody describe a year of going through Vietnam in the jungle or in that kind of a situation, he says, even though you were there and you know what was going on, you still have a different appreciation for people than somebody like my buddies back in the Benoit or Cam Bay or wherever he was at.
Let's go into that too about this brotherhood aspect. So, and I've probably said this every time I interview a vet. As someone who appreciates the military so much and hopes to somewhat understand the epic aspect of entering, participating, and surviving in stressful situations like a war. After 9/11, I had my chance, and I don't want to say chance, I had a decision to make, just like a lot of teenagers do when things happen like Pearl Harbor. You know, that's the only thing we can compare 9/11 to my generation. And so you make a decision to join or not.
When Pearl Harbor happened, everybody in the world went down and joined the military. I mean, and 9/11, everybody building up to 9/11, everybody knew about what is now the ISIS and Al Qaeda and Bin Laden and all this other kind of stuff, and the terrorism was going on around the world and stuff. And to me, that's as close as a relationship that you'll probably get with the Vietnam situation. Because with Vietnam, everybody knew that Vietnam was building up and going to explode and so forth and so on. And it was so unpopular because, first of all, nobody knew why the troops were being deployed over there and what the purpose was and what they were supposed to be doing and why we were there. You know, who in the hell give about Vietnam, a little country
it's kind of like
the world?
The end of the Iraq War, air quote, the Iraq War. After that 10-year period of occupation, people became impatient with it. A whole new generation is around, and they're like, why are we still there? You know, but that happened quick with Vietnam.
And it did, and you mentioned the 10-year, and up until Iraq and Iran and stuff, Vietnam was the longest war we ever fought, 10 years. And World War II didn't last that long, 4 or 5 years. World War I didn't last that long. Korea didn't, 2 years. And they're thinking, why in the hell is it taking us 10 years with today's military to win a war against somebody that's running around in the jungle with pajamas and Ho Chi Minh sandals and
I think you touched on
weapons.
I think you touched on it earlier. There was no. The only way you won Vietnam, and I'm going to go out on a limb here, is if you killed every person on the other side.
Exactly.
Everyone.
That's
and it included women on some cases, which is terrible.
Men, women, and children, whatever it supposedly took.
And so go into the Hearts and Minds campaign, because this was like their attempt to be like, okay, if we don't want to have to kill everyone, let's make friends. So tell me about Hearts and Minds.
And people, and one of the reasons I think the Vietnam vets was so much hated was they were seeing all these stories and movies and films and the propaganda, and even some of it was real, and on the news, of the women and the children getting killed. And it turned into the concept, you know, we get called baby killers. It turned into the concept that all we're doing over there was killing everything that walked, and that wasn't the situation. And you can't go into a country like that and into a situation like that when you don't even know who is who. You didn't know who in the hell the enemy was.
Yeah. So talk about entering a village.
And walking into a village. You know, you're fighting 2 or 3 different kinds of enemy. You're fighting the NVA, the North Vietnamese Army. They're trained. They're wearing uniforms.
They wear their uniforms.
You can identify them that there's a bad guy shooting. You're fighting the Vietcong. You're fighting the guerrillas. The Vietcong is the guys that are living out in the jungle and living in these little villages and stuff, or the guerrillas that are being...
And they've done it for 30 years.
They've been doing it all their life. And you don't know who he is. You know, he's wearing the same clothes as Joe Farmer over here is wearing, or the guy working on the rubber plantation. So you're walking into a village and you see a bunch of old men, you see a bunch of women, you see a bunch of little kids, you see 3 or 4 or half a dozen or so middle-aged guys that could be military, could be guerrillas, could be the Vietcong or whatever. But you don't, you know, they're not wearing a name tag, they're not wearing a uniform, and it wouldn't be uncommon at all if you walk through some of those places and a kid walk up behind you and drop a hand grenade and take off. But you couldn't shoot him just because you thought he might do it.
Yeah, because then you get into that news. The news is right there. Yeah. I don't think people realize that Vietnam was that first. I mean, they call it the television war, or the what is it, the living room war, because everyone would watch what happened that day at home.
Exactly, and for the
and
first time,
the news only puts crazy stories.
Exactly, and for the first time, we're fighting a war that's being so news media worthy. I mean, everything. I mean, the film clips are sent back and shown on the 6 o'clock news every single day. When you turn on the news, they say today in Vietnam, 123 American GIs were killed, 643 BC were killed, and then they're showing films of it. And that was.
And I think the military thought that a citizen could understand numbers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, when you heard about World War I and World War II, it was, oh, they took this place, and you would go on the map and see, okay, we're moving closer. We're through France. Now we've entered Belgium. Now we've entered Germany.
That's right.
This was, we flew 300 miles, dropped off 200 guys, lost 30, killed 300, got back on helicopters, and came back. Yeah. And a citizen sitting at home is like, why?
Why? Exactly.
Why?
I mean, there was no objective of taking this piece of ground. There was no objective of freeing this city and that kind of stuff. And you're told, the infantryman's job in Vietnam, he had 2 jobs: find Charlie and kill him. That was it. That was your job description.
You know, and even when you work in a job, take teaching.
Yeah.
We have a goal. You know, our goal isn't just to go to work every day and babysit these kids, even though some days it feels like that. You have a goal, which are these tests, which are to help students better themselves in life. I can't imagine, first off, not having a clear goal other than killing people, because that's just rough psychologically. Yeah. And then walking through a village where you're like, is that guy a guy that shot at me yesterday? Exactly. I don't recognize him. You know, and to us, Asians tend to look similar, and probably to them, we look similar. So you're like, okay, I don't know if I trust that guy. I'm going to keep an eye on him. And like you said, then a kid walks up and
it's just like when you mentioned the movies, Platoon. They go into this village and they do kill some of the civilians in the village. And even though they're not, quote unquote, the Vietcong, they're sympathizers. Or Charlie has said, either you will do this, you will store our rice for us, or we'll assassinate you. And they're forced into doing those kind of things. You know, you go into a village, you find a cache of rice or weapons. That's the Vietcong is put there and says, you will protect those for us, so when we come through here, we'll have food.
Yeah, and so these villagers are like in the middle.
Exactly.
Because if they don't cater to the U.S. soldiers, might get killed.
Right.
The next day, the Vietcong's back and it's like, did you help those U.S. soldiers?
Yeah. And they'll kill them and not hesitate to do that.